All right, making a wind call in the field, guys. So when we're making a wind call in the field, there's three pieces of information that we need to know, and the way I like to collect it as a shooter is this sequential order. So the very first thing that I need to identify, first and foremost, is direction, right? So figuring out where the direction of flow of the wind is coming from. So that also helps me identify as a shooter which direction I need to point my barrel, whether it be left to right or right to left. And that's what I like to say in my head is, hey, wind is coming from left to right or from right to left, because that immediately tells me, hey, if it's coming from left to right, I need to push my barrel to the left. And then once I identify, hey, the wind is coming from left to right, I can then start my search patterns to figure out any kind of key indicators I see to determine now wind velocity, which we'll get into here shortly. But another common question that we get when making a long range wind call is, okay, well, what really matters? At the shooter, in between, or at the target? I'm definitely a big believer in that it all matters, right? And the best way to break that down is to break your sectors into three different sectors. So at the shooter, in between, and at the target. And two out of the three zones will always agree with each other. So if at the shooter it's left to right, in between it's left to right, but at the target it's right to left, then I'm opening up with a left to right wind call. Next thing I'm going to do is determine wind velocity, right? Now, with it being 2021, we have these awesome things called kestrels that help us identify, what the wind is at the shooter. But I like to look at this more as a training tool, because sometimes when you're in the field, especially when you're in a pinch, you don't have the time to pull out a kestrel. So in training, what I like to do is definitely test myself to identify what wind feels like in terms of how it's touching my face, what it sounds like, and then based off of experience, I'll just take a crack at it and say, hey, based off what I feel and what I hear, it's 6-7 miles an hour. Then I'll pull my kestrel out to see how accurate I am, whether I overjudge the wind or underjudge the wind. Right? And typically, based off my experience, what I found is that you can start to feel wind at about 3-4 miles an hour. You can start hearing wind at 4, and it makes a distinct sound up to about 12 miles an hour. And anything past 12 miles an hour, it all sounds like the same stuff. So definitely, you can use those feel and audible indicators to help you determine a wind speed in the case you do not have a kestrel. So once I determine my wind velocity, I can also utilize my observation by looking downrange, looking at vegetation, and looking kind of at mirage based off of the angle. Just be careful with mirage, just because depending on where you're at geographically, your mirage indicators could be a little different from venue to venue or environment to environment. And then last but not least is value. Wind is never ever blowing straight 90 degrees, cutting our barrel, so we have to identify, hey, is the wind hitting the left side of my ear, or is it more coming back off behind my head? So figuring out a value, whether it be 3/4 value, half value, whatever the case might be, might help with your wind call. At the end of the day, making a wind call is one big giant guess, right? There's no such thing as a perfect wind call, and the more that you accept that, the better you will find yourself at being a better guesser. So, and that's pretty much Wind 101 in a nutshell.